Yeah, it got my mullet just perfect.
Yes,
And
yes,
yeah,
yes.
and
This is the Imperial Schools of Honor podcast. I am Josh Folan, and we are doing an Order of Erdrick interview here. So I'm here with Caesar Filori, and Caesar was a gameplay counselor at Nintendo during NES's heyday, and was one of the 4 featured counselors profiled in the 1991 January 1991 issue in the Counselor's Corner installment. And we are going to start with discussing exactly what that experience was like, and kind of see where the conversation takes us. So. The first question I have for you here, Caesar. What is the biggest baseball star's ass whipping you ever doled out at Nintendo headquarters? Who was it administered to, and how badly
oh,
was said ass beaten?
holy mackerel, man. That's a tough question. I well, see, the thing is, I trained with the best. My friend of this day and desk mate, Greg Louder, and I played baseball stars literally every day. And
Okay.
we had a special thing, a sort of it's called an extendo cable, I believe, at the time. So we could have 2 controllers going into one NES, and we had a sort of a, it was illegal in the call center, I believe, but we had a splitter so we could see the game on 2 TVs, and we
Okay.
would play baseball stars ad nauseum. I don't know who I whipped the most at it ever, but I promise you that the skills were pretty high on that game, and I know that definitely got to double digits over many a person during those days.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, we're going through, like, the way this podcast works is we're going through every issue of Nintendo Power, Sega Visions, and Game Pro in newsstand order. So we began with the Nintendo Fun Club Newses back in 86 or 7
Wow.
when they first started, and we've worked our way all the way up to where we're at now in the timeline. So we've seen a lot of these counselor profiles, and I can tell you right now that your profile hit harder than most profiles, if not every profile we've seen to date. And that's part of why I'm so excited to, I haven't spoken to any other counselors before. So that's what kind of why was so excited about getting you to agree to this.
That's
So,
awesome. That's
yeah, but yeah,
awesome.
we love the, yeah, I don't know, it wasn't, I like to play baseball stars. It's like, I like to whoop the asses of the experts in video games of this kind. That's how I play it. I don't just play the game.
Yeah, no, it was far from just a casual pastime for me during that time of my life. So trust me. And by the way, good on you. I was a original subscriber to those newsletters when I was a kid, so I
Awesome.
knew those well, and that set the tone for me when the opportunity arose to work there part time after school as a counselor. So
Okay, well that's
that's cool.
exactly what I wanted to turn to get into your origin story for this. So yeah, by all means, kind of, how did so you saw how, well, just instead of trying to prompt you, just how did you get the job, and how did that opportunity present itself? How did you engage it? And I mean, so this was an after school thing in high school?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
It's interesting. Even to this day, and back then, I still consider myself a musician first, and wanted to be a pop star. Still doing that today with my music, which is funny, but haven't achieved those lofty goals there yet. But
Tough, man. Artistry is
interestingly,
tough.
it is tough. Hey, I'm not giving up yet. I still got time. But the but no, basically it's funny. I was also wanting to buy music equipment, so I was working part time at a silk screening shop with a friend of mine from high school. On the way home one day, I tripped and broke my wrist, and so all I could really do is I couldn't play guitar, couldn't do anything outside. Sports and stuff sucked. So I just sat inside and played Nintendo a bunch, and then my sister actually told me, they hire people to counsel customers on the phone at Nintendo, and maybe you should go do that instead of working at the silk screening shop.
How
And I
would
thought to
she know? How
myself,
would she know that? How
well,
how is that?
she actually got a job there and worked there for a little while herself.
Oh, okay.
Um, and she was a
This
bit
is
older
family
than me,
business.
family business. Um, and so I said, well, why not? And so I went and applied for, it was a temporary job at the time when I started. they give you a little quiz, like, what do you find in the, various dungeons in Zelda, and, what's some of the cheat codes for the games, just to see if you actually know your stuff at the time. So I got through and went into training, which was interesting, and eventually got into the phones, but that's a whole story in and of itself.
Okay. So you're what age when you're starting the process?
I was 16. Almost.
16.
I was gonna turn 17 the next month. So I started in September '89. Yeah, and so yeah, that's right. I was about to turn 17.
That's wild that they were bringing high school kids in. I mean, it certainly makes sense from like the interest perspective, but it's wild that they were, just dropping you guys on the phone.
Yeah.
Or I mean, you said it's a process. Were you on the phones before you were 18?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I had my first. They call it like some of the schedules for these 10-hour Saturdays, taking calls, and I just finished training, and my first day on the phones was one of these 10-hour Saturdays. And talk about terrifying. There wasn't nearly as many games as there are now, but the questions, you never knew what was going to come in. Now eventually you just kind of know all the answers. It just kind of happens after you take enough calls. Sure. But at the time, I had my own notes, my own binder that I'd created from training and notes I had taken. And they had some, sort of hodgepodge, binders in some of the desks that were incomplete or missing, And so my first day, I really felt bad for all the other counselors who were more senior than me, because I had to transfer so many calls that day to other people. Said, "Hey, let me transfer you to the expert on that game, because I haven't played that one yet." And then, boy, that was a rough
up
day.
onto someone else. Okay, so that. That's amazing. So you built your own binder, because that's the thing. Like, I've seen some of the pictures. I've read some other interviews with gameplay counselors, and there's been mention of those kind of binders populated in the office that you guys would work from. But that's so interesting to hear that you, in training, built your own. And was that something that you continued to build on and build out as you worked there?
Yeah, everybody did. I mean, that was our initial survival manual, essentially. Would take notes in training. We would share other notes that we've used the copy machine from other counselors to help each other out, so we can quickly get to answers on games that we maybe hadn't played at the same depth as others. So yeah, we all had our own
personal one. Caesar, have you saved that? Do you still have that?
I do.
Oh my God.
It's in the garage right now with a bunch of, I would stick like memorandums back when we didn't have email at our desks. This is 1989,
Sure.
So we'd get like paper memorandums and little handouts and stuff like that. And covered in stickers and stuff.
I got bad news, buddy. I'm going to bug the shit out of you to see as much of that as you are willing to take the time to show me.
Absolutely. No, I kind of realized, I only realized in like more recently, like what a time capsule that actually is.
Oh, so my God, yes.
I'd be happy to share that.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yes. No, we got a decent little following, and this is, I mean, as this interview probably suggests, I am incredibly minded towards the history of this stuff. And yeah, the internal Sega's actually, I see more of this stuff on the internet from Sega. There's a lot of like, I don't know, kind of, they were really good seemingly about just customer engagement, and like there's all these letters and stuff you see people got, like they would actually do a lot of written, and maybe Nintendo did this too, I just not as familiar with it, but Sega would do a lot of written correspondence for gameplay tips and stuff too. So there's all these letters out there of like these not handwritten, but hand typed, they're like personalized letters to kids with tips on how to get through certain parts of games and stuff. And yeah, that kind of, I don't know, those relics are fascinating to see for sure. So yeah, by all means, yeah, we'll discuss that later.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. So what? Oh, so you're building out your book. You're starting there. What? And you kind of mentioned it. There. I'm sure your first day you weren't familiar with this, but each game probably, I would assume, would kind of have their expert or their person that was the go-to once you got to know the office and your coworkers. What was the game, if any, that you became that for?
Boy, definitely Contra.
Okay.
Baseball Stars, obviously. Not like it really needed that much counseling. I don't remember much of the detail now, but Mega Man series, all those games, Castlevania series. I wasn't sure if I was known for it. I loved Faxanadu at the time. Everybody loved Dragon Warrior. So I mean, but I mean, everybody, there's nothing super special about me compared to the other counselors. I mean, we all
Okay.
had sort of our specialties. I had the games that I loved the most, and played the most and was passionate about, the entire Super Mario series, etc. All the Zeldas, so on and so forth. I think
Okay.
I could tell you which one that I okay, I tell you what, if anybody ever called up and said, I'm playing Legacy of the Wizard, I tell you what, I want to say, I can't remember who it was on the team. There was at least one or two people who knew that game well, and and good on them for knowing it. But that was a tough one. That one in the Goonies 2, just because the Goonies 2, every area looked the same. So they would
Yeah.
say like, "Oh, hey, I'm stuck in this area with red bricks." Like, okay, that's kind of like could be anything, And so,
Right. Yeah.
so it's impossible. And
Yeah,
and just
Goonies 2 is a good idea, that kind of shadow gatey interface, but yeah, it was not built out very well at all yet, or they hadn't figured out how to put that in the NES at least. So I hear that.
yeah.
So okay, so on a given workday, what was there only one office? Like, did this only happen in one place? This call center. There was only
Yeah.
one work site, right? Okay. What would it? I'm sure Saturdays are probably a little more heavy volume than a Tuesday or whatever. But what would be an average? How many guys or people are working the phone on a given average shift?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's two kind of multiple flavors of folks. You had gameplay counselors, you had customer service people, and you had the correspondence department. Some people are cross trained. I became that after a while between customer service and gameplay counselors. But I would say, depending on the shift of the day, 20 to 100. I guess it's really tough for me to. I'm picturing the office space and how crowded it was at different times, but the weird shifts, like the super early morning and super late at night, was a thinner crew. So
Sure.
I would say probably got no less than 20 people, maybe. I'm sure someone will correct me. But I'm sure that when we're at full staff and the whole floor is full, probably 100 people.
So it was a nice big room. So you didn't have your own cubicle. You just get popped into a cubicle on a shift. You didn't have your own like workstation that was yours.
Well, after a while, you ascend to the lofty place where you don't have a floating desk and you do have your
Oh,
own
okay.
desk.
Nice, nice,
And
nice.
so that felt good. So you can lock your stuff up in the desk and the cabinet up top, so you didn't have to haul it in every day.
That's amazing.
So that was super cool.
Okay. Cool. So I know it was a long time ago, but do you have any, a favorite call-in that you might recall having to work through with someone or having to bring in others to help you, and it was kind of like a cool tag team job? Like, do you have any good, tried and true canned call-in stories from your time there?
Boy, wow. The most rewarding ones I think truly were. I'm trying to think if there's one because there was a lot of special moments. Sometimes, especially during the week, you get the adults when the kids are at school, and you get adults calling in. And like these, whether it's like an older person or somebody who's a stay-at-home parent or something like that. They would call it because they're bored. And those are interesting conversations because at the time it's like video games were new and they're just very sweet. I guess those are the calls that I enjoyed, helping these people that were just trying to, check out these video games and wanting to learn a little more about them and probably connect with their kids and stuff like that. Those were cool.
So you're saying calling in not necessarily, no, not necessarily, but not at all looking for actual gameplay tips, just literally looking to talk about video games?
Oh no, not well. It kind of. They would call with a question.
Okay.
But after a while, it kind of evolved, and they just kind of wanted to talk, and we weren't really there to do that. So I tried to keep, and I didn't want to get in trouble, so you kind of steer it back. But sometimes that was the case. So those calls were sweet. The ones you remember, unfortunately, are the ones that people act all crazy and they call up and they say weird or terrible things, but those were not the fun ones. But sadly, those are the ones that were so shocking that I remember them probably more.
Well, by all means, tell me. I'll listen to one of those stories too.
Oh my goodness. I don't even know, man. Just like, just people. Probably the cleanest one would be like people call up and they would say, I'm having a
Oh,
problem.
we don't have to be clean on here, man. I say fuck all the
Okay.
time. Don't worry about it.
Okay, well,
This is definitely not a children's show.
The tamest one is, somebody said they put oh, my Nintendo isn't working. But of course, we're not allowed to say your Nintendo. We're supposed to say, you mean your Nintendo Entertainment System, because Nintendo's the brand, the NES is the product. There's a weird legal thing about trademarking that went on. That's a side story. But anyway, someone say, well, I don't know. I just stuck my peanut butter and jelly sandwich in there and it just, messed it all up and stuff like that, other people talking about having intimate relations with their NES, which caused it to need to be cleaned, so just really weird stuff like that.
Crazy stuff. Yeah, when there's no gatekeeping and just a number to call, man, I can only imagine.
Absolutely, man. It is wild.
And that is, I remember we certainly called a handful of times when I was a kid. Not a ton because it was long distance, and my dad was militant about the long distance phone bill. But we still would do it sometimes. And I wish I could. I don't remember the process all too clearly. Was it just? I mean, did you just get routed? Literally, they call they call the number, and then just one of you guys would pick up. Is that there was no intermediate?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah, they'd call in, and then we had this reader board that would show how many people were in queue, how many people were sitting in idle at their desk on their phone, meaning they couldn't take a call, et cetera, et cetera. So we could sort of see the volume of things coming through. And then there's a whole light on our phone that would change from either be green if we were just available, or if there was just a light number of calls, it would get to yellow and red to let you know the urgency of trying to get through your calls to help get the call number down. But yeah, it was just routed to the next available person, I believe.
Do you recall I'm sure you guys had, and I mean, you modify it over time, I'm sure. Although Nintendo also kind of militant in their in their brand control, so maybe they policed it a little harder than I'm assuming here. But do you recall at least the starter patter that they gave you for beginning a phone call?
Yeah. So it's like, said, Nintendo gameplay. This is Caesar. How can I help you today? That was basically.
Okay, something now. Okay, I was wondering, because it's such a they do such a it's such a cool thing they do with the magazine, like the agent numbers and stuff. I thought perhaps there was
no special treatment. But I tell you what, after taking calls I was on the phones for a couple of years, and even after that, my telephone etiquette, was pretty immaculate, and I think it keeps up to today. And I felt bad. Some of my friends would call, and when I felt like the call was getting to the end, much like when I wanted to end a call with a customer who was maybe difficult to deal with, I would say, "Okay, is there anything else I can help you with today?" I'd say that, and so I would say that with my friends when I saw the phone.
Push them off, yeah.
Dude, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no, that's an incredible life skill to get. I mean, I went to school for finance, and some of the internships I had in college had cold calling components to them, as you would probably expect in the finance realm. And oh my God, was that just even, and you're talking there, I'm what, 21, 22 in those cases, like I don't know, just fear of now as a 42-year-old adult that has had to do plenty of phone jockeying over my life, and it's no big deal. But when you're that young, like calling someone unseen and asking anything of them, or just trying to whatever, it's terrifying. So it's an incredible life skill to be taught that at 16 to understand that a phone call is meaningless. Just to have the conversation skills to navigate them quickly, get off of them, and get what you want out of one is a great life skill to learn that young.
Yeah, it was interesting. They definitely trained as well, and we'd go out and we would sort of listen in with other people taking calls that were had done it for a while, and then when you first go on the phones, they sit in with you and listen to you and give you some coaching after the call as well. So, but after a while, though, I think just to kind of close on that, it's like, like I said, after you've taken thousands and thousands of calls on at the time, a relatively small number of games, after a while, it really boils down to just what felt like a handful of questions that would come in. So it really just became autopilot. So I literally every day, I went through phases. One was to beat Contra every day. Another one was to beat Super Mario Brothers 3 every day. In other words, I mean, as like a starting of my day. I couldn't start the day until I did it. So it's like blast through, beat that game, beat this game, or play baseball stars with Greg as much as possible.
That's what an incredible job to have at 16. My first job, I was bagging groceries at 14. Actually, I got into this program my freshman year of high school that allowed me to work half the day and go to school for the first half of it. And I mean, clearly, just not even close, man. My dad would come early. I grew up in Ohio, so winter there, and my dad would come early to pick me up from work so he could watch me struggle to push. The last thing you had to do was push the carts in on an icy parking lot. He would come early to watch me have to do that, just as a demonstration of how not as cool my first job was.
No, well, I mean, I totally understand it. I was stacking hot, freshly pressed T-shirts up a steaming hot conveyor belt, and loading them into boxes and loading boxes into a van and driving it to Seattle and unloading it and going back and forth over and over again. That's what I did for the summer before I started. Yeah,
big change for sure. So so you started at 16. How long were you there?
Well, I was at Nintendo till 1997. So so I went, I got onto the Elmo team. Maybe you might have heard about that. That was our computer. At some point in those couple of years, they rolled out a computer. They gave us real computers at our desks, not just the Nintendo Power and customer service terminal, which was the AS400. But when we got the Elmo stuff, I like to write, and I like to, I loved to make maps and, tips and stuff. So I got onto the Elmo team. So I got off the phones a few hours a day to write quick guides for games. And so I did that for a while, but then ultimately, and then this, if we could talk about this at whatever you want to, but my big transition it really got me to where I am today is getting into product testing in the engineering department.
Okay. And I mean, no, by all means. So you were on the phones till about when, would you say?
I was on the phones until I think June or July of 91.
Okay. So not long after this issue then.
Not too long, yeah. So it's like 2 years. Well, the thing is what happened was when I was in gameplay counselor training, they needed some people to come and do basically testing, some product evaluation work in a separate building, that was just a block away. And so I happened to be the right place at the right time. So me and a couple of the other counselors went over there, and we just went and kind of play tested a bunch of games for like a week or two. And I thought
NES games, I presume, yeah.
NES games, yeah. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, this is a job? There's a thing here like this? And it made it my mission in life to say, okay, look, that's it. I get to basically test video games all day. It is work, right? You're not really playing. You're supposed to be, looking for issues. And once I discovered that's a job, I set my absolute goal on that, and it never wavered.
And they were letting you. So you were literally allowed. You would go in for a shift of the phone counseling, and they would let you walk out of that and go do this for a portion of that time. It wasn't.
No, I was in training. I was in the training group, so they basically delayed my training by a few weeks or something like that, so I could go and support the game evaluation team. So, and that's where I met a guy named Michael Kelbaugh. He is now the president of Retro Studios, but he was one of these testers at the time, and he was a musician too. So he and I became good friends back then. We're still friends today, and then he told me about the team and all the stuff they do over there. I'm like, oh man, I got to do that. And so the whole time I was on the phone, I think on maybe every 4 to 6 weeks, I would literally type a memo to Rick McManus, who ran that team over in the engineering group. And I still know Rick to this day. And basically begging for a job, putting my best foot forward, saying, hey, I did this project over in the evaluation center, very interested in this role as product tester. If you could please let me know if there's any availability, all this stuff, basically begging like every 6 weeks until, and it wasn't that many months, I guess it went by. I guess it was I started the begging, I think, in September, October, and then that continued all the way through until I got the job. But I remember finally these positions didn't open up very often, and so we had a job board. There wasn't like a BBS or a website. It was a card would go up on this job board in Cafe Mario, and I saw one pop up there said product tester. I said, "Yep, this is my shot. I'm getting this job no matter what." Now, a couple key things happened here. One is that of course, they had this backlog of memos I wrote to the hiring manager. Second thing is I was playing Maniac Mansion.
Oh, great game.
And it was on and I love that game. And I put the hamster in the microwave, and just to see what happened, and it exploded. And I knew that was against the Nintendo policy. I never had blood in the games back then like that, especially not an animal that you can.
They censored the hell out of that game. It'd be tough to get everything out of there.
Yeah, I know. So I went and told my friend Michael Kelbaugh in the testing department. I said, dude, I just blew up a hamster in a microwave. And he's like, oh my God, really? And so that became a whole thing. And they had to basically, I don't know if they had to landfill all those cartridges that had been sold or whatever, but it caused a huge situation, actually. And so, I think that endeared me with them a little bit or something. And it actually got a mention, much to my surprise. There was a book that came out a long time ago called Game Over. It was about the video game industry. There's a mention of this situation. And my claim to fame, apparently, will be that they say, well, someone found that if you put it in the microwave, it blows up. Well, that someone was me. So
until this episode drops.
Until this episode, I'm looking forward to my next late night talk show engagement as a result of that.
I interviewed the first, I haven't done a ton of interviews for this. I've done interviews for other things, but the only other interview I've done for the podcast here was Blake J. Harris, who wrote Console Wars. And Game Over is actually the book that he most cites, inspiring him to write that. So that's a seminal. I haven't read it. I just dropped it into my Goodreads the other day by happenstance. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that. I hear it's a good book. Cool. Okay. So what was the timestamp on starting? And then, so it was September of 91 when you made this transition. How long did you spend between that starting the training on the gameplay counselor stuff? When was that, would you say? Just to give me a timeline here.
Oh, yeah, that was September of 89.
September of 89.
Yeah, through like October of 89. I think that encompassed the training and my short stint as a product evaluator.
Okay, so you did 2 years on the phones, roughly.
2 years.
Okay, and then you moved over to that product testing department. And how long did you spend there? And what was the rest of the timeline of Nintendo work-wise?
Yeah, well, it was that 92 until like I want to say it's February of 97 when I left Nintendo. Now, a couple things happened. One, I almost left once to go work at an independent studio that one of my coworkers had started, but the director of the department, Don James, who I appreciated this, he said, Caesar, I know you're interested in this new opportunity, but let me just want to give you some advice, like fatherly advice to me at the time. I think you should stay here. It's a better place for you. It's more secure, and it's a good job. I just want to give you that perspective. And I heeded his advice and I stayed. And it ended up being the right thing for me because it wouldn't have ended up being a long-term situation had I left, unfortunately. But so I stayed there. But it was there until 97 when, again, I started wondering around that time because, there's still people, and it's great. It's a wonderful company and a great place to work. Some of my friends I worked with back then are still there right now, and still work there. And it's great. They have a great job. They treat people well. Again, it's a good place to work. But I was always wondering, hey, is there anything more that I can do as a career, in games? Is this it, or is there more? So, had some great experiences at Nintendo, going to trade shows and, working on, tech demos and all the rest. And it was super fun. But one of my coworkers, and actually he was my boss, I think at the time, his name's Sean O'Connor. I'm just one of my best friends.
He was one. I remember he's one of the counselors too, right? I think I remember that name.
There's a Dean O'Connor was one of the counselors, and I think that he was the guy that actually did like Legacy of the Wizard, if I recall correctly, interestingly. But I think that was Dean O'Connor. So Sean O'Connor was, I don't think he never worked on the call center, but he was the supervisor there, but he got a job as the test manager at Electronic Arts Seattle, which was kind of a semi-short-lived studio. It was there from 97 to 2002, I think. and they did Need for Speed PC and FIFA for PlayStation. Which is what their sort of role was within Electronic Arts. He was looking for a test lead to grow a test department. And I thought, okay, well, this is my step up to go work at an actual game developer, go be a test lead. So I went there and, interviewed with like just a couple people and got the job. And then I resigned from Nintendo and I went to Electronic Arts. And that was in, I think, February of '97.
Cool, man. Yeah, it's I don't know. I've certainly read plenty of other interviews with the counselors and stuff. It's just amazing. It seemed like it was such, and it makes sense. I mean, young kids into that, like, not fledgling, but early stage development industry, dropping kids into that and giving them opportunities just because they're there on site and have the opportunity. Like you say, you even understand it was a job and you're like, oh, holy shit. Yes, I will do that every day if I can, So like those opportunities being available to such young video game heads, essentially, it makes total sense that it was such an incubator of industry talent, but it's wild how many people came out of that hive seemingly. So it's very cool.
Absolutely.
Very, very cool.
One of my friends, Jake Kasdal, he started 17-bit games and moved to Japan, which was awesome. And just so many other people, like I said, Michael Kelbaugh, who runs Retro now, and just a ton of other people, my good friend Sean O'Connor, et cetera, et cetera. So, it was a definite incubator. But, honestly, I think back to that time, especially being a counselor, we had our GPC jackets, and I wish I still had mine. I don't know what happened to it in one of my moves. It's somewhere, but that's something that pains me to this day. But we were a pretty tight knit crew. There was different sort of like gangs, I guess, within the
sure.
Just people into different things. But we would like things like we'd go to Pizza Hut like every, I think, Tuesday, and then we'd go there and take over the Pizza Hut and hang out and eat pizza and stuff. I don't know. There's some fun social things. We had this football game. I think it was called NFL Play Action Football.
NES.
NES Play Action Football.
Caesar, I am not kidding you. That's the next game episode we're doing. That game right now is on my TV. I paused the start of a playoff run in it to jump on here and do this with you. Yes.
Oh man, I love that game. And
I do too. It's such a good simulation effort for that era. Like that, I love Tecmo Bowl is obviously incredible, Super and the original, and they're more fun from an arcade perspective. But the simulation effort and like the 2-player co-op stuff for NES Play Action, so good, just so good.
I love that. I mean, I like Tecmo, and that was fun for a super arcadey situation. That was great. But I was definitely a Play Action Football guy.
Yeah.
And we used to do tournaments in the Coliseum. One time they went and rented like a motel room off site so we could go have a giant playoff party together.
Amazing,
in like a hotel suite.
4-player action, so good. Yes, so good. And it's not, it's again, I just all too inundated with these magazines and these games and stuff. So I've consumed too much information, but like the actual reception to it, because it is like this slower simulation thing. A lot of kids, like even my little brother, I loved it. My uncle, who is a little bit younger than my dad, so he was kind of more of just like an older brother to me. He and I used to play it all the time when I was younger. But even my little brother, who was right there next to me for a lot of this, like never really got into it. And we were talking about this. He's on the podcast occasionally too when we do RPGs. And I was sending him stuff because he's actually an Oilers fan, and Houston's one of the 8 teams they have on here. So I was just sending him stuff, and he had no experience with it all. He was like literally Googling playthrough videos and stuff. And he's like, it looks so slow and clunky. I'm like, yes, but it's so good.
Yeah, it sure was.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic game. Okay, well, let's turn back the clock a little bit and get back to the gameplay counselor stuff for a sec. I have some random stuff I wanted to go through here. So they have these monthly profilings of 4 counselors in the magazine, and I presume that was a rather sought after and desired thing to have bestowed upon you. So can you talk to me about the selection process for that?
Oh, yeah.
How do you come to be selected? Was there politicking for it? How does that go down, and how did it go down for you specifically?
Well, I was blissfully unaware of the politics. I didn't really understand that at the time. So all I know is I really wanted to be a Nintendo power. I think and it was something like, how do I get in it? and I think I maybe asked around a little bit and saying, "Yeah, I'd really love to get in there." Of course, time goes slower back then, so the amount of time it was since I started training until I was in the magazine, it felt like it was maybe compared to today, it felt like 4 years or something like that. And I think it was a memo that was put on my desk, or somebody told me. I can't remember, but they told me I was going to be in that issue, and it happened to be the
Okay.
Mega Man 3, and I love that game. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
oh my god!
So you knew that in advance. You knew kind of what the issue was going to be about, and that was the one you were going to be in.
I believe so. I knew I
Okay.
had some sense that it was going to be in the Mega Man 3 issue.
Okay.
I believe. I mean, memory's weird, but I do think that was the case. So I immediately went. Of course, I was making back. By the way, of course, 1990 wages. I think that the pay was like $6 an hour or something, $7 an hour or something like that.
Totally fair trade. Totally fair trade for what you were doing.
I know. And so but I did take some of my hard-earned money that wasn't spent on guitar strings and went to Banana Republic and got myself a new shirt.
This was my next thing.
Yeah, it got my mullet just perfect.
Yes. Yes.
And they brought us to a photo. Maybe had questions, but then they brought us to a photo studio near the office.
And did they do all four of you at once like that? Was like a group thing? Did you know who you were going to be with? I guess was really what I'm asking there.
I don't know that I knew who I was going to be with, other than maybe if they told me, just in passing. But I remember just going to the shoot, and I really don't. I do think that we were there together. I'm pretty sure we walked over together. Okay. But I'm not 100% sure. But that's my latent memory telling me that we did walk over together.
Okay, cool. Okay, so you do the pictures obviously, but then we have these profiles where you get to the dossier. Yeah. So talk to me about how did they collect that stuff, and what went into? Was it kind of a group communal thing that you'd filled out together, or was this something you were given, you had time to think on and kind of do on your own? Okay.
Yeah, we did. I did mine on my own, and honestly, that mine absolutely reflects exactly what I was into at the time. And there's no doubt about it. I just learned about Australian rules football, and my buddy I was making music with at the time, we would just watch that. I mean, and then we tried to play it, and stuff like that. So it was.
Yeah, that's a very important distinction. And like we microanalyze these things, dude. Just for comedic effect, right, and to do a show. So yours again, why it kind of hit so hard when this is the episode just came out too, so you could listen to if you want to go back and listen to this episode just for that section for your own amusement. Yeah. You're welcome to, of course. But it was very funny to me that music is listed because again, if we just looked at a million of these, so you can kind of get tonality and stuff and differences in them, but music is listed in this ambiguous sense that implies it could be the consumption of it, the playing of it, the appreciation of it, whereas Australian rules football is very specifically listed as playing it. Like, I don't just watch this shit, I play this very difficult and manly game.
Yeah. Well, if you call getting together with a couple of my friends and trying to simulate playing it, yeah.
So it was not professionally. I guess let's just clear that up here on the pod now.
No, it was just It seemed like such a wild thing, and I mean, funny enough, I actually got to meet some Australian rules football players on a business trip I took about 10, 15 years ago for Microsoft.
I bartended with one in New York. He was a monster.
Yeah, totally right. Yeah, they're not normal. Normal.
Yeah, but both mentally and physically, he was a monster. Like
correct. That's funny. But yeah, no, I would call it like I loved it. Thought it would be the great thing to do, and tried to simulate it as best I could. So that's the answer.
Okay, so you got to take it and kind of do it on your own, and this was just like they gave you a slip of paper and you turned it in, or how did that? Okay.
Yep, that's it. I think I had a form. It's like a form I filled out. Again, we had no computer, no email. I didn't have the internet at home, etc.
Sure. We speculated, Jay and I, my co-host, we speculated that perhaps because one of the other actual I'll give you some additional background here. Yes, you mentioned the mullet. That's a funny thing we have begun with the podcast and going through these is because there is this like why, and I understand it was of the times. I was certainly alive then too, a little younger perhaps. I didn't have my own, but I probably would have maybe if I would have had more control over my own look at the time. But there's such prominent things with the counselors. So many of them have them that we came up with the idea of doing this mullet counselor championship playoffs thing. So we took this, we made a bracket out of all the mullet counselors from the first issue through I think our first one went through like issue 16, and we're working on the next one we'll do once we have enough to populate a full bracket again. But yeah, we did a full like week by week breakdown of this. I can send you the images stuff. Just for hilarity. But yeah, so we the mullet thing is a big thing for us. We have a ton of fun with these, and that also was why we singled you out specifically, or not. I was so again. You and whoever the other one was in that issue 20. But my point here,
Josh Shepard.
Okay, yes. So we were talking about how, again, going back to that questionnaire, we were talking about how he had Mega Man 2 listed as his favorite game.
Right.
And we speculated that because your profile was done with such like, hit so hard that perhaps these were done as a group and you chose Mega Man 3 as a one-up on his. Almost as if Mega Man 3 was so new, like someone chooses Mega Man 2 and it's like, I am on the cutting edge. I like Mega Man 3. It's barely even out, and that's my favorite game.
Oh, no, I'd love to say it was like that. It was just like, these questions, it's like, oh, yeah, well, these questions are easy. This is it. I knew exactly what I was going to put down. There's no consultation.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Okay, so moving a little bit further down on that. So have you ever played guitar with the Power Glove?
No, I can honestly say I have played the guitar with the Power Glove.
Okay. Well, first, actually, let me since we're just to keep things in line with how we do things on the podcast, we don't talk about the Power Glove on the podcast. I had one. We think it's a travesty. We think Mattel's marketing efforts with it were kind of grotesque and just nonstop at the time. So we don't talk about the Power Glove. We call it the Schmauer Dove. So let's please refer to it as such moving forward.
The Schmauer Dove.
Schmauer Dove. Just so we don't
Dove.
Yeah, don't recognize it as even a thing on this podcast.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, the Schmauer Dove.
Okay, so did you have one then? You're clearly talking about it here. Did you have your own, or was that an office tool that you had?
It was an office. Yeah, it was. I didn't have one. No, that's right. I didn't have one myself.
Okay.
I thought it was pretty dumb, honestly, because the original intent of it, by the way, was far more robust than it was, but they had to scale back. Sure. Tone it way down to really basic motion. So we had one at work. I think I checked it out I think that's how I recall it. At least I checked it out so I could use it and goof around with it.
Okay. All right. So that was that the general office perception of it, would you say, amongst the counselors, that it was not particularly
not useful. No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. not useful. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Right. So you have listed here that your greatest accomplishment is, did it even occur, or was it just boastful fish stories that you beat Contra in 15 minutes with one life with the Power Glove? And did you actually use the hand motions, or did you just type it on your arm with the controller on the?
This came up on a Reddit or on a Facebook group, and I started getting like dozens and dozens of messages from people because it came up. People talking about me in the Contra thing. I left it pretty ambiguous just because it was just fun. But ultimately, you can leave it to your imagination. But there is a controller on the Power Glove itself. Right. And I don't recall if the one I had borrowed was modified or not. But but effectively, there's a bit of a hack there. So, but I did. So to be honest, this absolute truth is my goal every day was to speed run Contra. I loved playing it. It was like a meditation to me, and I didn't even have to think about it. So I would beat it every single day, and it was easily at 15 minutes or less.
That's a fantastic game. So when you say using the controller on the arm, one hand with it actually mounted on your arm, or did you literally take it off and hold it like a controller, a normal controller?
Yeah, I'll say it was far more like the latter.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, I can't remember if it was modified or what it was, because I had a friend there that modded things all the time. But yeah, I wanted to be able to say I used the Power Glove in a way. So that's
fun. So like I said,
that's the true story.
The profiling would not have hit as hard without that anecdote. So I'm glad you went that direction.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Okay, so yes, because mullets are such a big thing, let's talk about yours. How long had you had it? What was the inspiration for the decision? And how much longer would you rock with it beyond January of 91?
Oh, this is getting into some interesting territory here. So what you're seeing in that picture was really the baby mullet. That was like the early days of the mullet. I had just started really, letting it go. I always kind of had 80s hair, but it was far more like Richard Marx or actually, like Don Johnson in Miami Vice was kind of my vibe back then.
That's so good that you were comparing it to well-known entertainment personnel's mullet, because we will do that when we go through these. One of the things I am sure to do is come up with a real-world comp for their mullets. So yes, the other guys, we called that a MacGyver mullet, and I called yours a 21 Jump Street 2-episode arc guest star mullet.
Yes, you got it. I love that you did that. That brings me a lot of joy, man. Well, so I called it my transitory in-between mullet, because honestly, the mullet I was going for, as a musician, lifelong musician, again, still doing it today, still making and releasing music, was John Taylor, the bassist of Duran Duran, and kind of like the 85 era. He had a just killer mullet. And I kind of thought that's the mullet for me. So like the A View to a Kill video that they did, Duran Duran, for the James Bond movie. Yeah, that was kind of the vibe I was going for. And eventually got there. Eventually got to about. To answer your question, I kept that mullet, I think, until, and by the way, it's fully evolved. Still, by the time like the early 90s showed up. So I think I finally parted company with it, probably a little late, in like 1993.
Okay.
Is when I finally said goodbye to the mullet and went and got just a proper, super short, almost military looking haircut, to which everybody on the row of the software testers I was working with, all they wanted to do is, it was weird. They all walking behind me and said, "I want to feel the back of your head," because some people walked by and they would rub the back of my head. I'm like, "Oh my god,
that's a solid tenure." So you say you were just starting it around the time you would have taken the pictures for this. So about 3 years, maybe. About a 3-year tenure.
Yeah, about a 3-year tenure. Yeah.
Word. Amazing. Oh, well, that was fun. Yeah.
I got some awesome. I could share with you separately or something, some videos and pictures to show you exactly to what extent.
Yes, no, by all means, give me an evolution. Give me an evolution flow chart. I'm happy to graphic up anything and share it with the release of this. We call them the Lork. We call our listeners the Lork disciples. We are, as the name suggests, RPGs and Dragon Warrior are big in our formative years as far as gaming go.
Dragon Warrior, that honestly is real quick. Dragon Warrior.
So good.
What I played the most of after I broke my wrist is I just freaking played the heck out of Dragon Warrior.
Me too, man. So we do, like I kind of explained the way we do the podcast. It's this. The way we go through an issue, like one episode is an issue on an episode on a certain issue of one of the magazines, and then at the end of that episode we pick a game that's in that magazine and do a standalone game episode on that game, and then we do that episode, then move back to the next issue in our magazine timeline. But we also do these kind of side shoots that we call side quests, where we just, because the RPGs are they're way too long form to do in one episode. It's insane. We actually tried to do one, the original Phantasy Star. Star. When we first started the podcast, we tried to do the original Phantasy Star in 2 weeks. It was the worst 2 weeks of my life trying to finish that game in 2 weeks. So yeah, so we do these other series where we do multiple episode arcs on just an individual RPG. The first one we ever did was Dragon Warrior of These. It was like 5 episodes, I think. So, we go to, again, just so minutia focused, and we talk about every line of dialogue and every plot point and everything in the games in such detail, and it is so much fun there. It's easily the best part of our podcast. I wish, almost kind of wish that's all we did in hindsight, because I think they're far better received and far more interesting maybe than our kind of standard issues. Not that those aren't enjoyed too, but the side quests are just so much fun because there's so much more to chew on in those games for obvious reasons.
Totally.
Totally. So yeah, so we really, really love those games. Yeah, we've done the first Dragon Warrior. The last one we did was Dragon Warrior 2. We've done Final Fantasy. We did Ultima Exodus, the first Ultima on NES, which is what one of the guys, Jay, quit the podcast during that. It was so bad for him. He quit after like episode 3. He couldn't take Ultima anymore. It's definitely a rough one. But still fun to do for sure. And yeah, we actually just started Phantasy Star 2 for the Genesis. As we're waiting to record the first episode of that. We're working on it right now. So yeah, the RPG stuff we just absolutely love. But yes, the point of that being that's such a big part of our kind of just our genetics, this podcast genetics, that we call the listeners the Loric Disciples, and the Loric Disciples really enjoy that stuff for sure.
I'm sure you played the original NES Final Fantasy.
Yes, that was So we did that for one of our side quests too.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
My little brother has a black mage tattoo. That's how much he likes Final Fantasy. Yes.
Okay. Sorry to catch up. You said the first time, but I got to tell you, man, there's another thing that would happen inside the call center. That there's this group of people called the GC6. Okay. And the GC6 were 6 gameplay counselors that were chosen to do evaluations on to-be-released games. And so the games would come in a cartridge where it was exposed, that the circuit board was exposed, and the EEPROM chips would be, you'd be visible because they would swap out the EEPROM chips for different games that they would burn in the back, which was one of my side projects at one point in my career. Anyways, I got to borrow one of those EEPROM Final Fantasy cartridges before it came out, and I wanted to play it so bad, but then I put it in my system and it was in Japanese. It had been translated.
That's tough.
So I wanted to play it so bad. I'm sure I wasn't the only person who did this, but I beat the game in Japanese without really understanding it. I had to figure out, figure out what the characters, what happens if I do this? And then I could kind of recognize the characters, this meant this or that or the other thing.
That's incredible.
And that
definitely an extra layer of difficulty for sure.
Dedication or insanity. I don't know. It's one of those two things.
They often go hand in hand. Yeah, that's great, man. If you could have smuggled one of those out of there, you could be a millionaire right now.
Right?
That's awesome. That is awesome. Okay, were there any other game magazines that you did that continue beyond Nintendo? Once you moved out of there, moved to EA in particular, I'm sure you clearly took an appreciation for other systems and stuff. Were there any other game mags that you were really into? Again, this is just the focus of the pod, so I'm.
I think it was EGM, Electronic Game Monthly. Okay. I think that was the main one that I read.
Okay, word. We just did. So we do, I mentioned we're focusing on Nintendo Power, Sega Visions, and GamePro primarily, but every now and again we'll just do a random magazine. We've done there was this one called Game Players something or other. Game Players. It's like a really long title. Game Players Strategy something or other. I had when I was a kid. We did one of those. We actually did the first EGM just recently. So we. Yeah, we're considering, so it's a thing, again, just all too off the deep end on this stuff, but GamePro is eventually Sega Visions is eventually absorbed into the parent company that did GamePro, and we didn't realize this when we started it and selected GamePro as our third-party independent perspective between the two proprietary mags. The idea was we do a Nintendo, a Sega proprietary, and then a third-party magazine to kind of give an independent view of these games. So GamePro, the company that makes them, eventually takes over Sega Visions in 92, I think, and we didn't realize that, and we think that's a conflict of interest. So
Right.
once we get there in the timeline, we're going to have to switch what our third-party magazine is because we think it'll be slanted towards Sega,
Yeah,
So
for sure.
EGM is probably what we're going to go with. That was actually, again, my co-host's favorite magazine too, growing up. So we're thinking EGM will eventually be a big part of the podcast. So yeah, we agree. EGM's a great mag.
Yeah.
I didn't really have any access to it as a kid, so I wasn't familiar. But that first issue, there's a lot of cool things about it. The way they rate the games is cool. That kind of like target graphic they do of like a hit or a miss or a near miss or whatever was a cool way to do it instead of just like a totally numerical thing like Nintendo and Sega are doing or GamePro are doing.
Yeah,
So
but you're refreshing some memories that I didn't know I had. I can totally see what you're talking about in my mind right now.
Oh,
That's
man.
awesome.
Dude, I don't know if, I'm sure, again, you work there, so I'm sure some of this stuff crosses your, at least into your periphery, if not right in front of you. But, you can get all those magazines on archive.org. And if you haven't done it, go to archive.org and download some of these old you get them in full, you can get them in the CBR format, which are like high resolution scans of these magazines. And that's what we do every time we do one of these episodes is go through page by page of these magazines, and it is just so good. It's such a good.
Does sound awesome, man.
Yeah, such a good nostalgia dive, dude. I cannot recommend it enough if you have an affinity for that era of gaming.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm still in games today, so
okay, yes. So my next question is, you went over to EA, so I'm thinking this is very possible. Once the 16-bit era dawned, which is really, the core of what we're doing, like our log line for the pod is, we're analyzing the formative years of console gaming through the prism of these magazines. And like the 16-bit era, that console war is really the thing that we want to really dive into, which is why I interviewed Blake, who wrote that book on, the subject, basically kind of one of the more seminal analyses of it, I think, to date. He did a great job with that book. So, the 16-bit era is really when the shit hit the fan is kind of what I'm getting at here. And I personally, I was the NES kid for sure, but when the Genesis hit, I went to the dark side and I went Genesis. Did you jump ship and go Genesis, or did you stay with the SNES?
No, I stayed with the SNES and Super Nintendo.
Okay.
And 64. It was so ingrained in us, even in the call center. I remember these sort of, I guess, they're paper sort of memes or whatever at the time. I don't know what you call it, but these handout people would print out these papers, and at the time, Genesis would say, "Genesis does what Nintendo don't."
Right.
So we had one internally that was Nintendo is what Genesis isn't.
Okay, very clever, very clever, very clever. Yeah. Yes, I've never heard that, and even Blake would love to hear that. Actually,
it wasn't an actual thing that Nintendo did. It was just somebody internally did it. But I never jumped to the Genesis. I had friends who had it, and there were some games on there. I'm trying to remember which ones they were. Probably a couple of the launch titles that looked pretty cool. But I never made the switch to Genesis.
Okay. And you still play today. So what are you gaming on these days? This is literally the last question I have on here.
Okay, well, I mean, right now, I have a 14-year-old son and 11-year-old daughter, and so my gaming has kind of shifted to what they're playing. So interestingly, my son loves StarCraft 2.
Okay.
And loves, and they still sometimes play Minecraft, and there's a new air combat game that's pretty cool. Not really a sim, but it's called War Thunder. So we play that sometimes.
On what system?
On PC. On PC. And we have
no console. Oh, you have an Xbox? Okay.
Oh yeah, I have an Xbox. I have an Xbox Series X. And right now I play a lot of Flight Sim actually. Okay. I love playing Flight Sim and the new Batman game. Love racing games. I play a bit of Forza. Just stuff like that. Just a bit of this and that.
My co-host works for Microsoft. He works for the Xbox division. So he he is a very he's high. He's one of the high up finance guys there. So he gets a lot of stuff and he brings a lot of interesting perspective on the Xbox releases. So he's always talking about this. I have kind of given up on flat screen caveman gaming, as I call it, because I have a Quest and all I play is VR stuff. And I cannot. If you don't have one, oh my God, get one. It's just on another level.
I worked on that. I worked at Meta for 5 years.
Did you? So work doing what specifically?
Um, uh, um, Research as a technical program manager in the research group for AR and VR products.
Oh,
So
amazing, dude.
see like all the new screens that are coming out on these devices are the things that the team I worked with, the scientists I worked with, devised and partnered with the product teams to bring to product.
Well, fantastic. Thank
So
you.
yeah,
So thank you so much, Caesar, because it's changed my life, and I am just so into it. I can't even begin to describe.
It's so good, right?
It's
so
just
good.
it's just I just cannot believe it exists in my lifetime.
I hear you.
I cannot. Yeah, I'm playing the shit out of Asgard's Wrath. I got the 3, of course. So you got the the launch title essentially. I guess they're considering it. That came with it, Asgard's Wrath 2, and it's, oh my god, it is so good. It is so, I cannot stop playing it.
I had to give mine back because I had when I checked out from there, and I left there to pursue a new opportunity in games that was really exciting to me in 2022. So I haven't repurchased it yet. So I do need to get one back in my house as soon as possible.
It's so good. It's so good. Jay. That's one of our fun, just giving each other shit things for the pod. We had this guy. He's so pro company, Xbox and flat screen gaming and stuff, which I cannot believe Microsoft doesn't have a headset, by the way. But that's a whole nother discussion, of course. At least released. I'm sure they're working on it, but they haven't released one yet. So that's we're constantly arguing. And he has I don't have any kids. He has 15 of them. So there's this kind of this just lifestyle impediment that prevents him. He has a Quest, and we game on it sometimes together. But there's this kind of somewhat it kind of walls you off from the world around you, of course. So he has a harder time really engaging it. So he still and being working for the company, he plays a ton of Xbox. So we're constantly warring about that dynamic of how I'm I can't even I can't even do it. I like the idea of playing a game on a flat screen on the other side of the room. I can't even wrap my mind around wanting to do it.
yeah. I hear you. It's definitely, it's so immersive and cool. And your partner your friend, your partner there is probably works with so many people that I'm still good friends with today, working in that division, because I worked there for 11 years. Okay. So yeah,
still at Microsoft, really, you mean?
Yeah, at Xbox.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that was the thing I did after EA. Okay. I went to Microsoft as an audio director there, and then I moved into as a producer in games publishing, and worked on some cool stuff with those teams. I know that's not what this talk is about, but yeah, but it's a fun overlap. I'm sure that we probably have a lot of shared friends there.
Probably, yeah. He lives up in Seattle. He's up in your neck of the woods. So
yeah, that's great.
He's in Bellevue specifically.
Yep.
Very cool, dude. That's a hell of a life in gaming you've had, man. Congratulations on that.
It's interesting, man. It's crazy to think about. It's like at the time you don't realize it's special, but kind of felt like it might be, and then it was proven to be special. Those golden days at Nintendo and such a unique time.
Incredible, man. Well, cool. I don't have any more questions on my stupid little list here, and I obviously don't want to. I don't want to monopolize your whole morning. I'm sure you have life to deal with. Maybe do you want to, since you're on here and you're still pumping it out, do you want to talk about your music a little and tell me what you're doing and what you like to do?
Well, I can't escape my 80s roots, and I've done a lot of projects over the years. And so if anybody sees my name, you look under my name in music, you'll see all my projects. But I'll tell you what's currently going on is when the pandemic hit and I was at home, it didn't have any distractions. I really got back into my roots of, playing guitar and synthesizers and writing songs. So that basically evolved into the project I'm working on now. And I've written and released, I think, over 40 pop tracks and instrumentals since the year 2000 now, and 2 albums.
So if you have any links you want me to drop in the show notes, please do email them over, and I'll include those when I
I'll send them right over. Yeah, it's called The Wandering Now, because what is now? We wander around a bit. So The Wandering Now, and we're cranking out new music all the time. So yeah, I'm happy to share that with you.
Awesome, man. Very cool. Have you done any? Just being around it and having an inclination towards music in the first place, have there been any opportunities to merge the two at all, your day job and music,
not
in the places you've worked?
No? I guess just No, so I haven't made music for games. I've done some between EA and Microsoft. I worked with another friend of mine from EA that doing sound design for games, just kind of as a really fun
Awesome.
project to work on with him. So, you know, that was great, but yeah, not directly.
Okay. Copy that. Okay, cool, man. Well, thank you again so much, dude. This was fantastic. And yes, I really, really want to see that binder. So let's talk about how to get that in some sort of digital formatting of some kind. So if at minimum I can see it, but I bet other people would love to see it too. So
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, let's absolutely talk about how to do that. And yeah, man, thanks so much. And I'll of course let you know when I have the episode together here and share it with you, so you can check it out, share it, revisit this fantastic time traveling we've done here.
Yeah, no, this is great. It's really fun to talk about. I don't really have a chance to talk about it too much, and so I appreciate your questions. It's been really, really fun.
Cool, dude. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much, dude. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.